First of all, and it's probably the question I get asked the most, is how many hours sleep should you have a night?
It depends a lot on your age. Children generally need a lot more sleep. Babies can sleep 16, 18 hours a day. When you're an adult, it generally decreases. Older adults often sleep a lot less. So you hear from elderly people that might only sleep 6 hours a night, but generally aiming for around that 8 hours is the rough amount. And the reason for that is because when we sleep, we go through various stages of sleep.
Yeah.
So we're sat here, we're awake. When you're falling asleep, you generally enter your REM, so rapid eye movement part of sleep, and then you have another stage or another category of stages known as non-REM. So I mean, for general people to understand, I don't think you need to learn about all the stages of sleep, but understanding that there is a cycle that you go through when you sleep. The rapid eye movement stage is generally the bit we do most of our dreaming. You can feel quite lucid. There's a kind of real oh gosh, I was dreaming about riding a rabbit down the motorway, whatever it might have been, is often in that stage of sleep. In your non-REM stages, you are basically going through that deeper restorative process of your brain resting and recharging. The important thing is that we need to go through those cycles. It's a cycle. So you start with a very light sleep, you go through those stages and come back to the start again. We need to do that about 3 to 5 times a night. And to be able to do it that many times, you need enough time, and therefore that's why we need something like 7 or 8 hours of sleep to give your brain the opportunity to go through those stages. So that is the key thing I would say, is try and allow enough time. So if you're setting your alarm clock for, say, midnight, and your alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, you're not giving yourself enough time to go through 3 to 5 stages of that sleep cycle. You're basically cutting yourself short. You're preventing yourself from achieving that by not creating enough time. So the first thing to do is think about, am I actually allowing enough sleep? I in the past, guilty of it, going to bed at 11:30 at night, getting up because I need to be on the ward for the ward round, at 7:30. Okay, by the time I travel to work, okay, I'm up at 5:30.
So you didn't no.
You're not allowing enough time.
No. That's really clear. I've been reading a lot recently about quality over quantity of sleep, but it sounds like there's a minimum quantity and then getting great quality sleep. So you do go through all those phases.
Some people was everyone is different. I mean, I gave one example of a difference with being neurodivergent, having a brain that is different in that sense. That will affect sleep. I mean, genetically, we're all different. I mean, everyone is different. So some people need more, some people need less. I think the really big thing to ask yourself if you're listening to this is, do I feel well rested? Do I have enough energy throughout the day? When I wake up in the morning, do I feel recharged and ready for my day? I'm not saying, this idea that we jump out of bed in the morning is a slightly social media driven thing. I'm not saying you need to wake up and be like, whoa, let's go for it, let's get out the day. But generally speaking, do you feel
well rested?
Well rested. And I think that's a good place to start, and ask yourself that question and then work backwards. Am I allowing myself enough time? And people might think, oh, that's silly. Of course, of course I'm thinking of those things, but honestly, are you giving yourself enough time? And what I'd really factor into that as well is how long it takes to wind down. So, I often talk, one of the biggest things that I advise people when I talk them about the mind manual is about thinking about the first hour and the last hour of your day. And both are equally as important when it comes to sleep and setting up your ability to have a good night's sleep. The hour before bed, it's really important to be as best as you can. No one's perfect. Hands up, I've been guilty as well. The phone, really, really trying to put that phone down and removing as much, much light stimulation or light pollution, almost. I like to think of it, from your environment. So low light lamps, quiet and gentle surrounding, avoiding watching things that stimulate your brain, because a lot of the time we think about the phones, oh yeah, if I'm on my phone, that's the phone light, the screen light, it's keeping me awake. But it's not just that's what you're seeing,
brain's ticking over.
But it's seeing what you're seeing. Like if you're scrolling through social media and you're seeing things that are stimulating your brain, maybe things that are harrowing, maybe things that are upsetting, maybe things that are exciting, you're telling your brain to wake up. You're literally getting dopamine hits. Dopamine being our reward hormone. You're swiping through TikTok, dopamine. Dopamine is about, you're basically waking yourself up.
So it's the enemy of a good night's sleep.
Exactly. You should be winding yourself down. So that hour before removing the light. Try and, read a book, listen to music, do things that are calming. Another really good trick, if you find it generally more difficult to wind down and feel like you're in a place of sleep, is to have a bath or have a warm shower. So do your shower the night before potentially, or bath if you want to. And the reason you do that is because in a bath, generally you warm your body up because you've got a warm bath. When you get out of the bath, your body is at a slightly higher temperature, then it cools down. That cooling down process signals the brain it's time to sleep. If you think about naturally, if we were back in the cave days, living in a cave, it gets cold at night. Cold means time to sleep. So when we're going to sleep, our body temperature drops. It drops off towards the evening, and part of that also stimulates melatonin production. So in a part of our brain called the pineal gland, we release melatonin. Melatonin makes you feel calm and rested and sleepy. It's why often we have a nice bath, and you get out of the bath, think, oh, I'm so relaxed now, and go to sleep. You're releasing melatonin. Melatonin makes you feel tired, and you can go to bed and sleep. So create a good sleep routine. It doesn't have to be complex. My one is generally, I aim to sleep at 9, which means that from about 9 o'clock, I'm starting to head towards the bedroom. I've got a low light lamp in my room that I put on. I do a little bit of reading. I'm chilling out with Roland, my dog. He's usually on the bed and we're just relaxing and stuff like that. Putting some
what
like
sort of
quiet
dog is he?
music.
Is he big or small? Does he
Small,
take much space?
Cavapoo. He's a Cavapoo, so he's not too big. So yeah, space in the bed's important. He's in the bed and we're just relaxing. Wind yourself down. I don't have too much problem heading off to sleep, so I don't have a bath at night always. Sometimes I do, but I just wind down and I go to sleep. In the morning, the hour is very important as well, because in the morning there's a great opportunity to tell your brain that it's morning and it's the start of your day, and therefore if your day starts now, it must end at some point. And that's why during the pandemic, one of the big challenges, and people generally said they slept worse during the pandemic, is because yes, we lost routine in our general structure of our day, but our brains lost our sleep routine as well.
Right.
The circadian rhythm is the sleep clock we talk about. It's a 24-hour clock within our brain that tells us to be awake and tells us to be asleep. Now, most of the time, people get up in the morning and they, taking the kids to school, or they're going to work, or you're going to school yourself or university. You're going somewhere, you're leaving the house. When you leave the house, even on a rainy day, you're getting exposed to natural light. That natural light tells the brain it's morning time. And by knowing it's morning time, that's helping remind that clock within your brain that in 12 to 15 hours, it'll be time to sleep.
All right, so it's prompting you already for the next night's sleep.
It's telling you this is morning. And if this is morning, it means that nighttime is 12 to 15 hours later. What did we do in the pandemic? For a lot of people, it was going from the bedroom to the desk, or maybe your bedroom was the desk. So you weren't going outside to have that mental indicator, I guess, that this is morning. So I'd say to people, even if you work at home now, and I do a lot of time working from home, really use that first hour productively. So try and get up the same time each day. The brain needs a routine, and try your best to have at least 20 to 30 minutes of natural light in the morning. So head outside with the dog for a walk, get outside
your briefcase
for a walk.
and walk outside the front door.
If you can. A lot of times, so for example, this morning, before I came to this podcast, I was working from home. I create a commute every morning. I leave my flat, I take the dog, and obviously the dog needs a walk anyway, but I see it as my commute. And I walk for 30, 40 minutes, sometimes even longer if I have time, and I come back to the flat and I start my working day. That's allowed me natural light. It's told my brain to wake up, and that's allowed my brain to know, guess what, Alex, 12 to 15 hours, it's time to sleep. So a lot of what we need to do to create a good sleep isn't about the bedroom or just about going to bed. It's what you do in the rest of the day. And the other bit we do often in the morning, which is a really big topic of its own, is caffeine. We drink coffee.
Can I come back to that? Because I want to talk about caffeine and alcohol. I just want to finish off on evening rituals, if you like. So you've talked about, not going onto social media. You've talked about maybe having a bath or a shower. Are there certain foods that you think you should have? We'll come on to what you should avoid in a minute, but what you should eat, and how long before you go to bed? When should be your last meal, and is it the same for everyone?
So again, it does vary for different people, but we need to remember that to go to sleep, our body and our minds need to be in a state that is ready to kind of drift off. We're not asking our bodies to work hard, either physically or mentally, but also internally as well. So sometimes, I don't know what everyone else's experiences, but I know that, say I've been on holiday, say you've been somewhere nice and warm where you eat later in the evening. I say you eat at 8, 9 o'clock at night. often I won't sleep for a good 2 or 3 hours after that. You don't feel like you can rest. Your body, you've eaten a big meal. You don't feel like you can go to sleep. Sometimes you might even be unfortunate to have reflux and stuff. Our body actually gives us good warnings not to eat too close to bedtime. Anyone that's experienced acid reflux after a heavy meal will know how uncomfortable it is. And it's so, I guess, obvious when you've experienced it that our bodies need time to digest food and then go to bed. And generally I would say try and avoid having a big meal 3 to 4 hours before bedtime. So if you're saying, right, I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock at night, try and have your evening meal no later than kind of 7 o'clock, ideally 6. Allow your body time. You might be sat there in the evening unwinding, watching the TV, but your body's still working. It's digesting the food. And commonly, particularly in the UK, our evening meals tend to be when we eat a lot of our carbs. Often we eat a lot of protein and things in the evening as well. Takes time to digest. So that's a big important thing. In terms of what to eat when it comes to sleep, as always, the most important thing for anyone listening is to try and get as balanced diet as you can. Look at your plate and look for the colour of the rainbows. Try and have plenty of fruit, veg, have a colourful plate. If you've got a beige plate, so full of just carbohydrates, you're probably not getting all the different vitamins and things that we'd aim for. There's lots of vitamins that are associated with sleep, things like magnesium, important, vitamin D, thiamine's important as well. There's lots of vitamins we could talk about, but broadly speaking, making sure that you can get a balanced but varied diet is really important. As many vegetables and fruit as you can. If you can't get enough of that, that's where the role of things like supplements come into play. So if you're someone that, because of dietary requirements or intolerances, or because you just don't get that within your diet, then that's where things like vitamins are important. And I'd say to anyone, get advice from your GP, because everyone's diet's different. So then you go to your GP, talk about what kind of foods you do eat, things that you aren't eating for whatever reason. They can advise you, well, actually, perhaps you're missing out on these vitamins. This is what you should have. But, one thing we can say is that it is really important what you consume. And some of the things you consume are less helpful. And that's where caffeine and alcohol can be a problem.
Just coming back to the supplements, because I was really interested on your view on supplements. You've mentioned magnesium. I've been taking magnesium and ashwagandha recently, and that's really helped my sleep personally. But
magnesium
what's your view
relax,
on
magnesium
supplements for sleep?
Well, I think things like magnesium is quite commonly associated with helping to be able to relax and go to sleep. So I think finding what works for you is very important. I think there is a bit of trial and error with stuff, but I think broadly my advice, because there is so much on the market, my advice is always to make sure that you do your research from trusted sources, and always, and if in doubt, ask your doctor. That way that what you're taking is likely to help you. And often it's in context of other things. I mean, it depends also what kind of sleeper you are. Like if you're someone like my dad will say, well, I go to sleep fine, but I wake up. So different things might be needed, or there might be different reasons for that person that they're struggling to sleep.